Hello, everyone. So we're going to talk about this subject of dialogue fragments in this video. A dialogue fragment is a kind of fragment, and it's used for getting data from the user. Now, you can see it in the example here on the right. As you may remember from the dialogue message lesson, we used layout to interact with the user. But here we're going to want to use fragment. So, you may ask, what's the difference between a dialogue message and a dialogue fragment? Well, we're going to learn. So right here, the dialogue fragment has all the aspects of a fragment structure. In other words, it gives all the advantages that fragments have. But if you use dialogue fragment, your dialogue message's life cycle will combine with the fragment life cycle. So in other words, it won't be dependent on the activity life cycle any longer. I don't want to tell you too much about all this and just make it all a big confusion ball, but you should know that there are several advantages to using dialogue fragments, and you will learn them as we go along. So let's move on over to Android Studio and go on and learn some of them. Now here I've created a new project for this particular video in Android Studio. But before we start, I want to show you the finished version so that you see where we're going. So there's one text view and one button in the main activity. And when we click the button, the dialog fragment opens. And in that dialog fragment, we're going to want to get some data from the user. So if the user clicks the cancel button, fragment's getting closed. And if the user enters a message and clicks the OK button, the message is taken and it shows up here in text view. So you can use that example in a simple yes-no chat form of alert dialog, or you can design a more complex interface and get some more detailed data from users, like in a form. All right, so let's start to develop the application. So first off, I'm going to add a button to the main activity. Then I'll change the text of the button. Now, because the layout is constraint layout, I will give a position to the button. And I'll add text view under the button. Increase the font size of text view. And I'll position the text view on layout. So now I'll give an ID to these components. All right, so now we can move on over to the Java section of the main activity. So first I'm going to define components. Then inside the onCreate method, I will match the components to their ID. I'll add a click listener to the button. And now it's time to create the dialog fragment. So for that, I'm going to create a new fragment. And again, I'll select an empty fragment. And I will write my dialog fragment. for the name of this fragment. Now, Android Studio has created a new fragment for me. So that means I've got to design this fragment in, well, like I did in the example. I'll show you how I did it earlier. So first, I'll delete text view. Then I'll change the frame layout to be constraint layout. Then I will add and edit text here. There will be a text view to show the headline over this edit text. I'll change the text of this text view, and you can probably write whatever text you want. And I'm going to increase the font size of text view. So now I can define the constraint values of text view so that it will be located properly right there in the constraint layout. And there you go. I've defined the constraint values of edit text. So now I can delete the text of edit text. And let's add a hint inside of it. All right, so now we can get that data from the user with edit text. So I will add 2 buttons. And I will write text of the first button, cancel. For the other button, I'll just write OK. All right, so I'm going to move these buttons over constraint layout. And I'll adjust the constraint layout height value to be wrap content so that it's not going to cover the whole page. And I'll change the background color of the constraint layout. I'll also change the background color of the buttons. And I'll change the text color of the text view on the top. Now I'll give an ID to the components. Okay, so that's the design of the dialog fragment. So we're ready to move on.